Sometimes reviews are a great guide to know what you should and shouldn't play. Sometimes games get really good reviews, sometimes they get really bad reviews. But the worst kind of review you can really get is a mid-review, because mediocre means fine to ignore. Despite that, these games weren't ignored, though. In fact, they were enjoyed. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 games with mid-reviews that were loved by fans. Starting off with number 10, it's Terminator Resistance. This game got savage back in 2019. The PlayStation 4 version of it got especially bad on Metacritic with 0 positive reviews. The highest rating any major publication gave it was a mediocre 71. Seems like nobody really had anything nice to say about the game, but I don't know. I don't think it was that bad. And apparently there's plenty of other people out there that think similarly, because while the aggregated critic score is a 47, the user reviews have it at a 7.4, which is, I think, a lot more accurate towards the game's actual quality. I don't know what was in the air back in 2019, but a lot of outlets must have seen this game as an easy target.
Aim at its red eye. You'll see it. Explodes like a fucking bacon.
Don't you think I know that?
When you're shooting, I thought you'd be all in.
I mean, a lot of the criticisms aren't exactly wrong. The dialogue, the voice acting, the visual fidelity, it's not the most impressive or anything. The game's pretty short for what it is, and it's mostly Terminator fan service, but for fans of the series, it's still one of the best games of the franchise. It does a lot more to stay true to the movies than most other games. So, yeah. I mean, it's sort of a Fallout Light structure, and it's actually kind of ambitious and interesting. The shooting's pretty fun, especially once you start getting some heavy ordnance. It's a B- game, for sure. A surprisingly fun B- game that critics were overly harsh for some reason. The studio's follow-up game, RoboCop Rogue City, scored way better with critics, and while it is generally a better and more polished game than Terminator Resistance, the difference in quality is not as high as a lot of review outlets might lead you to believe. Sometimes I wonder if a lot of the praise that Rogue City got was kind of making up for the fact that they did Terminator Resistance so dirty. Not that Rogue City doesn't deserve it. In fact, it does deserve to be noted as better than Terminator Resistance, but they both deserve the flowers. At number 9 is Spider-Man Web of Shadows. As far as superheroes go, Spider-Man has a pretty good run with video games. They're not all winners, but most of them are pretty good. And that includes Web of Shadows, the first and only Spider-Man game developed by Shaba Games. This was pretty obviously rushed and in a lot of ways incomplete, but that doesn't stop it from being a favorite among fans for its Venom-focused plotline and satisfying swinging combat mechanics. Reviews weren't that kind, though, giving this game a pretty poor 68 average, while user scores, I think, more accurately reflect the true quality of the game, giving it an 8.2. It's a flawed game for sure that feels a little light on content, but what is here is very fun. Coming after the Spider-Man 3 tie-in game, this is also a really big improvement in pretty much every way. For fans, being able to switch between the black suit and the standard Spidey is also a great addition and adds a lot of layers to the game's combat, as do the aerial options for fighting and the ability to fight on the side of buildings. That's a feature even modern Spidey games lack. The morality system's fun too, if a little undercooked, and the inclusion of more Marvel Universe characters makes it feel like a proper Marvel game rather than just a movie tie-in. It's a game that a lot of fans recognize as one of the best Spider-Man games out there, and while it maybe isn't as polished as the new games, it does bring some new ideas to the formula and makes it one of the most uniquely fun games to get made using the license. At number 8 is Alpha Protocol. The cult classic Obsidian-developed spy RPG was savaged by critics at release for its many bugs, unimpressive graphics, and subpar shooting mechanics, and they're not even wrong about any of that stuff. This is a game with noticeable issues, and its more ardent fans even recognize this, but the reason the game remains talked about today is how incredibly reactive and choice-driven it is. It's something most critics didn't get at the time, or maybe didn't have the time to experience it in their review run, I don't know. But Alpha Protocol is one of the most impressive branching story games made. The amount of things that can change from one playthrough to another is absolutely staggering. That's the part of the game that its fans have come to respect and love about it. It's something no other game like this has really attempted, and that's what makes Alpha Protocol so uniquely beloved. It's one of the rare few games that actually feels like your choices matter, but the only way you'd ever really know that is to play through the game more than once, because otherwise it progresses so naturally you might be led to believe that it's all just set in stone, but it's not. A whole lot can change, and will change depending on your dialogue choices. That's what makes this one so beloved by fans. It actually delivers on the promise that so many games make the "your choices matter." I mean, a lot of the time, your choices don't really matter in Your Choices Matter games. I'm not saying there aren't a lot of other ways this game is mediocre, but the central part of the game that it gets so right is so good that fans are more than willing to overlook everything that doesn't quite live up to what it should be. And number 7 is Lollipop Chainsaw. This is a unique case where the critical reviews and the user reviews were basically in agreement, but that didn't stop the game from becoming a beloved cult classic. Had a 70 Metascore, 7.1 user score. Overall quality of the game really isn't in question here. It's a cool game with some good ideas that's pretty rough around the edges. It's a situation, again, where fans recognize the game has problems. They feel pretty much the same way as the reviews, but that doesn't stop them from loving it. It has a beloved cult fan base simply because of its goofball premise and anarchic energy, which in part comes from a pre-Guardians of the Galaxy James Gunn script. It's a grasshopper game through and through, and that wild creative energy that people love about Suda51 games is there. Like many of their games, it's also pretty rough. Like, the actual action game mechanics are not the best, but it's a game that gets on by style and content rather than mechanics. And number 6 is Earthbound. Yes, Earthbound, a game that's considered one of the best RPGs on the Super Nintendo. While that's true today, it wasn't always the case. At release, this game was met with a lot of middling reviews and low sales overall. Not every review was negative. There were a lot of positive reviews at the time, praising the game's unique atmosphere, but certain reviews from publications like GamePro did not go easy, giving it a 3.5 out of 5. Or this savage review in the July 95 issue of Game Players magazine that gave it a 69, and essentially called it an ugly, boring game for babies. Now, some of the criticism is valid. Compared to something like Final Fantasy VI, the game's visuals are not the most impressive, and the battle system is certainly not the most complex or refined. But these are all issues that fans were easily able to overlook because there's just nothing else quite like Earthbound. The game built up a massive fan base over the years, and entire fan communities were dedicated to the game and its follow-up that never got released in the States, but remains popular and gets a lot of support to this day. Were the negative reviews wrong? Not entirely, especially in the context of the time, but it's one of those rare games that has something special about it that makes it resonate with people, and today it's correctly regarded as one of the all-time greats. And number 5 is Nier. The Metacritic rating for Nier is interesting because if you look at the modern critical reviews, they're all effusive praise, while the actual, contemporary reviews, the reviews from 2010, they're way more unforgiving. That's what I'm getting at here. Almost every review from the time hovers around the 50 to 60 mark, which is brutal. It's got an overall rating of 67, but if you filter out the recent reviews, it's way worse. In contrast, user reviews sit at a respectable 8.5, so what gives? Scanning through the reviews, including some pretty infamous ones from GameSpot and 1UP, their primary complaints are that the action isn't great, and it's full of tedious fetch quests. And to their credit, pretty true. The combat is one of the weaker elements of the original Nier, and there are a lot of forgettable side quests, but overall the reviews are they come off really harsh. In the early 2010s, gaming journalism was still in this anti-Japan phase, which sounds absurd for whatever reason, but it was a real thing. It was just one of those ideas in the air. A lot of otherwise normal writers really clung to it for whatever reason. Today, it seems silly to single out Japanese-made games for whatever reason, but for a while during the Xbox 360's dominant years, a lot of writers were doing just that. And to be fair, the Japanese games industry was going through a major downturn at the time, but it kind of felt like kicking some people while they were down. Otherwise interesting games from the region got an unnecessary amount of blowback. I still don't know exactly why. Sometimes it felt like it was progressive politics. Sometimes it was like nationalism. Like some of it was literally because the games were too kiddie-based, and then some of it was they were too adult-based. Like there was too much sexuality. It felt like there was nothing Japan could really do right by these people's opinions. It really was all over the place. I really personally hated it. But we do need to say that the OG version of Nier is so far from perfect, it's funny. A lot of the reviews nitpick various things that I think aren't wrong. There's a reason they made that flowchart for side quests for new players that kind of became a meme. There is a lot to like about the original Nier, though. At the time, it was easily the most mainstream of Yoko Taro's games. Has an incredible soundtrack.
What the hell are these things?
An excellent American voice cast, and a fascinatingly weird story that rewarded multiple playthroughs.
I couldn't find a lunar tear. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to get better.
It's a game for only the most hardcore weirdos willing to sit through a lot of tedium to get to the good stuff, but the repetition somehow works for this one. It managed to gather a small but hardcore fan base that were finally able to feel some kind of redemption when Nier Automata came out, which was a critical darling and a massive financial success. Also, caused them to go back and make that combat a lot more interesting. And number 4 is Crash Twinsanity. Of all the Activision-published Crash games, this is the closest they ever got to anything near the quality of the original Naughty Dog trilogy, at least until Crash 4 came out later. Twinsanity may be buggy and pretty clearly rushed and unfinished in places, but it managed to do something new with the marsupial that felt fresh and exciting and wasn't just another retrend of the PlayStation 1 games. Critics were pretty harsh on the game's flaws, though, giving it an overall Metascore of 64, while fans were a lot more forgiving. For many, this was the definitive post-Naughty Dog game. Even now, some fans actually prefer it over Crash for the music, the humor, the weird gameplay mechanics that have Crash and Cortex working together or helping each other through obstacles, all surprisingly solid.
This is from Tiny. This is from Dingodile. Ripperoo, you shouldn't have. Pinstripe, how thoughtful.
It's a game that critics mostly overlooked because of how abysmal the franchise had been up to that point under Activision's guidance, and to be frank, it deserved more than indifference. Fans slowly and surely took to the game. It's definitely flawed. The rush development is very clear in a lot of ways, but it's also something the dev team clearly put a lot of effort into as well. It wasn't just another paycheck. They wanted to make a great game. At number 3 is Godhand. When talking about critical reception, with Godhand, the only review that matters is the infamous IGN one that gave the game an abysmal 3.0. This is back in the day when people really cared about review scores, and not in the way they do now where it's mostly engagement bait. Back in 2006, a lot of games lived and died based on their reviews from major publications, so that IGN review was a black mark on Godhand that left a devastating effect on the game's overall reputation. The funny thing is, most other reviews, even from time to time, are not nearly as harsh. The game's Metascore is a 73, but the only outright negative review is IGN, and it skews the entire average pretty significantly. Fan reaction was of course very different. People love Godhand, both then and now. Today it's seen as a quirky action classic, and to the fans' credit, Godhand is a great game. But it is also a very weird game, and I don't blame people for being turned off by the over-the-shoulder beat-em-up with tank controls thing, or being unimpressed by the game's generally kind of workman-like visuals. One important thing to keep in mind is that the game launched as a budget title. It was never meant to be a big thing. They sold it for $20, which was a steal at the time, for what is a ridiculously fun and bizarre game. Fans actually respect the game's unusual control scheme and high skill ceiling, while most critics focused on the unmemorable graphics and weird controls. Things were a little different at the time. They just didn't put effort into a game like this. Whereas now, if there's something where people clearly like it, you tend to have reviewers actually try to figure out why. And number 2 is Rain World. This love it or hate it indie game has one of the biggest discrepancies between professional reviewers and user scores I've ever seen. It's got a 59 Metascore, which is pretty abysmally bad, and the user scores are a respectable 8.5, so what happened? It's simple, reviewers just didn't give it a chance. Rain World is a really weird and unforgiving game, it's intentionally designed to leave you confused and frustrated, and that's what happened with most reviewers. They struggled with the controls, they didn't know what they were supposed to do, they died, lost game progress, they were frustrated, and that's the mindset in which they wrote their reviews. Pretty much, they were miserable. It's something that even fans of the game do go through. The difference is they managed to push through it to reach a point where they actually had a grasp of the mechanics of the game. Through trial and error, people slowly began to understand how the game works and find a newfound respect for its ambitions. The fact that this game managed to find an audience at all is impressive. Most indie games of this nature live and die on critical reviews, and if they aren't positive, then the game's done, but Rain World managed to survive and built up a larger and larger fan base of people who actually like how difficult and obtuse the game is. It's one of those games where if you like it, man, are you gonna like it. But if you don't, you're probably gonna really not like it. And it didn't click with critics, because, they really didn't like it. But for fans of strange and unforgiving games, it's really highly regarded. Of course, the developers also did patch the game quite a bit post-launch. That probably did help overall as well. And finally, at number 1, it's Flower, Rain, and Sun. This 2009 Nintendo DS game from the Madman Suda51 got savage reviews, 54 Metascore with only 2 actually positive scores and a whole lot of mixed and negative ones. The user score, on the other hand, is complete opposite. It got an 8.8 and is highly regarded among fans of Suda51's peculiar brand of madness. Nobody else makes games like this. It's very much an acquired taste, but how often are you going to get the chance to talk about Flower, Sun, and Rain? It's a very weird and sometimes very funny game, but the gameplay is practically non-existent. For fans, it's all about the off-kilter vibes and goofy dialogue. It's got insane plot twists, basically the stuff you would expect from a Suda51 game, but in an old-school adventure game package. It's one of those games that if it came out today, it would probably get universal praise. Reviewers are just more accepting of these types of visual novel-style adventure games these days, but for fans, the reviews just didn't matter. A lot of the things they complained about are right on the money. It's just the game works despite the often simplistic puzzle design and aimless nature of the narrative. For Suda fans, this game was like catnip, but for everybody else, it was another handheld distraction that came out at a time when handhelds were kind of second-class citizens in the video game world. If it wasn't made by Nintendo, it was probably getting a dismissive half-baked review from somebody who clearly didn't care. I do have a couple of bonus games for you here. First, Deadly Premonition, a big cult classic today, but at release it got a pretty bad 68 Metascore, and while the user score isn't excessively high at 8.1, it's still way better. It's a game that fans like despite its many flaws, or in some cases, because of them. The badness of the game just sort of works here. It's a combination of awkward combat and bad driving with uncanny weirdness. It all inexplicably comes together and works really well. It's borderline so bad it's good. It's a game that's bad, but it's also good, which is a rare territory for games. Next is Sonic Unleashed. This one got a lot of hate from reviewers at release, with a surprisingly low 60 Metascore. It did have problems, but some reviewers rated it worse than the catastrophically bad Sonic 06, which seems crazy today, but the negativity around Sonic at the time just caused Unleashed to catch some strays. There is no denying this game has problems. The beat-em-up segments with the Werehog are, depending on who you are, pretty awful. I don't know, I kind of like them. I don't think they're as good as the other segments, but they're not terrible. Even if you don't like it, though, the game more than makes up for it with some of the best Sonic quote-unquote boost gameplay in the series. The daytime stages are just super fast and super fun. The missions by themselves do just a ton to prop up the rest of the game. These days, the game's reputation is way better, which is only helped by the excellent recompilation project on PC that managed to port the Xbox 360 version over to Windows. It's an incredible achievement that makes the entire game way, way more fun to actually play. And finally, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of the Sky. 54 Metascore, 9.0 user score. Huge discrepancy. Biggest on this list. Why is that? Is it because these games are just that good? Or I don't know. But what's interesting here is this isn't just a case of a game getting reevaluated later. These are all reviews from at the time. Fans just love these things, and critics really just don't. There's really nothing else to it. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.